just keep writing because every script you're gonna get better. And so I think every script I've written, I either realize it's not worth it quicker and quicker every time and like scrap it, or I'm like, okay, no, I can see this is better. I can see this is better. Just putting more guardrails on your writing is the best way to get good, like better results.
Tell me, how was the process of writing your very first feature?
My very first feature. Ooh. It was not very good at the end, but it was an important process. I was working for Tom at Impact Theory, and kind of when I first came out to LA, I had this idea that, you know, it was all in the future. I was going to be a screenwriter in the future. It was fine. I was working, you know, at Impact Theory at the time, and that was all I was doing, and that was fine. And then slowly, as I started to actually like listen to more of what Tom was saying, I started to realize, wait a sec, I actually have to be writing and doing what I want to do if I want to have a, you know, prayer in hell of breaking into this incredibly difficult industry. Mm-hmm. So I got started working on my first script, and I basically said, I'm just going to do 3 pages a night, and that was it.
3 pages a night, mm-hmm. and that was it?
Yeah, I was going to do 3 pages a night.
You know, that 1 page a night is already like super difficult.
I mean, I think it's a personal thing. Personally, I think it all depends. I write very fast, and sometimes I wonder if I'm sacrificing quality doing that. But that's the only way I know how to write. I can't physically spend that much time on a page, so I just like when I write, I can sometimes write like 6 pages in an hour if I'm really in the zone.
Holy smokes!
And then some days it's like I get to 3, and it's like 3 hours of like crunching at a computer, like it's painful. Yeah, I write pretty fast, and then a lot of it gets pared down later. A lot of it gets pared away later. And the first script that I wrote, it was called Stopped. It was kind of an interesting premise, I think, but a terrible execution. And it was basically a world where time stops, but some people keep on living in a stopped world. And so it's kind of a post-apocalyptic film, but all within one instant, like the space between an instant when like some subsect of the population, call it 10,000 people on the entire planet, were able to keep on living. And it was, I think that is a very kind of, that premise is ripe for doing something with it. But I think what I did with it was not good. What I did with it was just like, just a very run-of-the-mill like YA movie that like nobody's making anymore and was not very good. And I took... do you know who it was who said, maybe it's Stephen King, who said, write your first script, then go out in the backyard, bury it, and never look at it again? And whoever said that, I love that quote. And so I did that. I wrote it. I think the whole first script was like 200 pages that I wrote.
200 pages?
Yeah, it was really not the right, like, it was not formatted correctly. It wasn't like, nothing was correct about it. But yeah, I haven't looked at that since.
Yeah, my first one, I think I could barely break 60 pages, and here you're like 200 pages.
Well, no, there was another movie because like the second feature I did, because I've written mostly pilots and stuff, but the second feature I did was very much that, where I was like struggling, like I beat sheeted it out using the Save the Cat method, and I was like struggling to get it to 60 pages. I was like, I have to at least get it to an hour. Come on. Like if it's not an hour, it's not a movie.
Like it's not even a feature.
I gotta just like at least get it to this. And I was really struggling. I think I got it like 58 pages and I was like, fuck it. That's the most I can do.
What about the pilots then? So did you start the first long form thing that you wrote? Was it the feature, or did you have pilots before the feature?
So it was the feature. And coming off the feature, I was very much like, well, what do I do now? Because that took me like probably 4 or 5 months to write that.
That's still pretty fast.
Yeah, I think, yes. But to me, since I hadn't really written that much, since like I wrote 1 pilot in college before that. And
did you study writing in college?
Yes, I studied creative writing, kind of with a focus in screenwriting at a little tiny college in Dublin called the American College of Dublin. And I was there for 1 year, got an internship out here at Impact Theory for the summer. Came out for the summer, got hired at Impact Theory in the summer, and I kind of left college. So I'd written 1 pilot, which was it was actually, it was pretty good for what it was for a first pilot. It was pretty good. But when I went back to writing, 5 months seemed like forever because I'd like done 4 or 5 months on this one feature, and it seemed like forever. So the next project I worked on was a pilot that I think it was definitely, it was a very clear improvement. Like if I can look, they say you just keep writing because every script you're going to get better. And I have seen that to be the case. I think every script I've written for the most part, I either realize it's not worth it quicker and quicker every time and like scrap it quicker and quicker, or I'm like, okay, no, I can see this is better. I can see this is better. Just my physical, how I'm writing the prose in the action lines is better. And kind of the overarching kind of the theme, the thematic connections, the characters, the kind of misdirects, everything is better from time to time. The clearest example of that was when I went from my first feature into my first pilot, my second pilot, was the clearest like jump to, oh, okay, this is markedly better. I can definitely tell that this is a better pilot.
So you and I met through mutual friends. We go to a dinner party. They tell me, oh, he's a writer. We start talking about that. You send me your script. Every time I meet a writer, I'm like, send me your stuff. I'm always trying to read, and I'm always trying to find new writers.
Yeah.
So I got your pilot. I read it the next day. Freaking amazing. I couldn't put it down. Like I sat down and like got it down really quick. It felt very much like I could see it in my head, like the world that you were creating, the characters, everything. It was very interesting. How many pilots did you write until you wrote that one that I read first?
So I think 2019 was my year where I just really churned out pilots. So I wrote, I finished the feature in that year, and I wrote, I think, 3 pilots that I was like, these are good. And that, I think, After Death was the 3rd pilot I did that year. But I also, during the first part of COVID, when I was living back in New Hampshire with my family, I basically went through and took that pilot, and I took my first pilot, and I I didn't overhaul them, but I like really took a solid look at them and like started to like seriously like figure out what their problems were and kind of rewrite them, do a lot of rewriting on them. So I did kind of have that was my first pilot, and then there was kind of a After Death V2, which is what you read.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So in your case, when you're going at because TV and features are 2 different monsters, do you prefer one or the other?
I think I prefer TV, TV, almost always TV. I think I prefer TV because I just like the story elements better. I don't like having to wrap everything up perfectly in a ribbon by the end of like 90 pages. That's something that really frustrates me when I'm writing features. And I also prefer them because they're shorter. So you can get that, like, I think part of writing, especially when you're first starting out, like I'm still first starting out, and just writing a lot of stuff very quickly. Or not very quickly necessarily, but just getting a lot of different stuff done and experimenting, because there's definitely something to be said for having an idea, executing on that idea, and moving on, instead of like just taking one idea and just going over it again and again and again and again. And it takes way longer to write a feature than it does to write a pilot. And for that reason, I prefer TV. Now, I do think features have their place. I'm writing a feature right now because I want to go out and, whether it's this year, I have some personal stuff I'm going through this year, so I don't know if it's going to happen, but this year and next year, I want to direct this feature. I prefer features for that reason, because you can actually go out and execute on them much quicker with yourself. You can't really go shoot a pilot. I mean, you could. I have a friend who's actually trying to shoot an entire series himself, but it's much like, it's like, what's the point of shooting a pilot? Because it's inherently a part of something. But you can shoot a feature, and if it ends up good, you can submit it to festivals, you can potentially get representation, you can potentially get distribution for it. That's the benefit of features. But in terms of like, if I'm just going to write something, I prefer TV every time.
Yeah, I definitely don't recommend going out and doing a pilot for TV on your own. I did it with some friends several years ago, and it ended up being like a long short film. We didn't have the resources, and then for TV, it's almost like you can't really put it anywhere.
Yeah.
Like if you just have the pilot, what are you going to do?
You can't really submit it to film festivals. I mean, there might be some that accept them.
They have created categories in film festivals for TV pilots, which in my opinion, they're bogus. Like,
right.
Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, it's like, what are you going to do with that? It's like, even if you win a film festival, they're not going to just take that pilot and it's just a short film. It's just, you might as well do a short film and then do the same method there. So you have a short film, someone picks it up, and then they like option it into a series. Then you make a series of it. You're not. It's the same process, because you're just going to basically end up taking that pilot and doing it over again. Whereas a feature, like, no one's going to be like, this is the pilot, we want to get all the same people back and do the series now. Like a feature, you can actually, no one's going to ask you to redo your feature after a film festival. They're just going to, if they like it, they're going to buy it and put it in theaters or put it on Netflix or whatever. And So I think, yeah, for practicality's sake, I think it's good to have a mix of both, in my opinion, but I know a lot of people disagree with that, and a lot of people say it not.
Yeah.
I did hear one story that was pretty cool. I forget, again, who it was, but it was two writers, and they actually went and they shot their pilot, and then put it on public access in LA public access. This was in the 90s. You couldn't really do it now. It wouldn't have the same benefit, but they put it
Was it the people that were doing it about the prison?
You know who it was? It was the people who made, that movie Dark Waters?
No.
It's a movie, I think Mark Ruffalo's in it. It's about the Teflon. Teflon's the thing in like
Plastic, right?
Yeah, it's like, but it's super deadly, and it was basically this movie about undercover Teflon or something. It was the writers who made that. It was their first thing. They broke in by this. So they did a pilot. They released it on public access, and then they dropped flyers all throughout Beverly Hills, saying saying like, go, if you're an agent, if you're a manager, go.
But this was before the internet.
This is before the internet. You could never do that now.
Yeah.
Like and that's like one of the negative things about the internet is everyone is doing stunts like this.
There's nothing negative about the internet, Sam.
Fair enough.
Just joking. Yeah. Well, now what people do now is they do web series, and I think there's a place for that. You need a lot of luck, I think. I mean, you need to make something good, and then you need to get lucky and go viral. I feel like by the time you put all the energy and effort into writing a web series and shooting a web series and doing post, you might as well use all of that time and energy to do a low budget feature. So I don't know. What do you think about that? You did a small web series.
I did a web series. It was super low budget. I had one or two crew members, and we shot it in my bedroom during COVID. And it came out pretty well for my level because I'm mostly a writer, so my directing is leaves a lot to be desired. Everything I've done, I've gotten better. But for me, it was good for me. I think I see what you're saying about that. I do think if you want to be in TV, I think web series has its benefits because I prefer, my mind usually works in episodic stories. So then if I have an episodic story and I try to then take that episodic story and shove it into a feature, it's not going to work.
Yeah, it's my producer head is just thinking, if we're going to make something and it's going to take this long to shoot, to edit, you might as well do that as a feature. Yeah. It's easier to get distribution for a feature. Right. But yeah, I can see what you're saying.
No, that's what I was saying earlier. Like, I definitely prefer writing features if you want to actually execute on them. But sometimes, like with this project you're talking about, it was definitely like I had this idea of like, asymptomatic, like someone goes through like severe depression, like from social isolation when they're, when they have an asymptomatic case of COVID and they're stuck in their home, but everyone else is out and able to kind of open up in the world again, and they're already kind of all of their kind of energy is received from like social praise and social validation from everywhere, and so that makes it much more difficult. They turn inward and start to have basically the negative voice of this person is exemplified by used condom, and that's kind of the idea of the story. Is a little tongue in cheek, but that was definitely an episodic story. I didn't really want. It wasn't enough for a feature. It wasn't long enough for a feature. Like totally, all 5 episodes total about 20 minutes. Of that project. So for that project, it was definitely a web series. But I definitely agree. From like a production standpoint, it definitely makes more sense to be a feature if you want to just get something made.
Gotcha. So when you first came to LA, that was about 2019, and then COVID happened right away.
No, So I came 2018, summer of 2018. So I was here for about a year and a half
before
everything shut down. Yeah.
Gotcha. So tell me a little bit about your experience coming to LA. I just had a call the other day with a young filmmaker, and he was trying to ask me questions about like, do I need to be in LA to make it? Like people are telling me that it's a good idea. What's your take on that?
So it's being forced to change because of some personal things I shared with you, and I'll share on the podcast. I'm actually leaving LA for a while, for at least the end of 2022. I'm probably going to be out. I'll be back, and I have a film that's going to have a premiere this summer, so I'll be back for that. But I just want to do this. Is going to be my year of just doing crazy shit because I'm 23, and I think before I sell a pilot or get staffed in a room, it's good to just like be a kid for a little while, because I really wasn't a kid, because I did college for 1 year, came here, and I've been really hustling ever since that. So I kind of want to do 1 year where I'm just like doing crazy shit all around. I'm hoping that is not, I have to believe that is not going to impede my ability to to make it in this business. I don't want to live in LA forever. You were in love with the city, and that's amazing. I am not in love with the city.
That's really good light, good locations, and good people.
It has all three of those things, yes. I grew up in cold. You grew up in a warm climate, so this is probably kind of more homey to you. I grew up in a cold place. I was just in Utah, and that's where I'm going for the next couple months is Utah. And I grew up on the East Coast, not in Utah, but I love the cold, and that feels homey to me. The cold, and then in the summer, the humidity and the smell of humidity. The just super wet, clean beaches are that's what feels like home to me. So I don't have this kind of super personal love of Los Angeles, but I probably will end up here for a significant portion of my life. And for a long time, I did believe that you had to be in LA if you wanted to make it in this business. The very first episode of my podcast was called "Why Every Screenwriter Has to Move to LA." And I'm kind of forcing myself to come around on that issue because I realize I don't want to live here my whole life. And I also want to be a screenwriter. So I'm going to have to figure out how to, thread that needle and figure that one out.
Gotcha.
I think definitely it's changing during COVID. And over the last couple of years, it's definitely changed. I have friends who are in rooms that in writers' rooms that none of the rooms want to go back. None of the rooms want to go back in person. People want to be remote forever. Even at Impact Theory, I know several of the employees at Impact Theory are now remote, and they're living out of Tennessee and other places around the country. And so I'm hoping that stays for at least some of it. I think it's definitely going to be harder if you're not in LA to the soft connections. Like when I met you, and I gave you my script, and that's how we found started our relationship. Those things are going to be way harder to do outside of Los Angeles. There's no doubt about that.
I think definitely there is a change now that people are more open to the idea of working remote. I don't know if it's going to change. I don't know what's going to happen in the future. To me, I still prefer this. Yeah. And when you're breaking story, and to shoot, you have to be in the room. And eventually, if I'm shooting your pilot, and I'm there with the actors, and I'm working on the scene, and I need you. Yeah.
Well, I'll be there when we're shooting the pilot. But that's the thing. When you're shooting something, that's different. I'll come to LA and stay for a few months, My kind of goal, my kind of dream is that I would live somewhere abroad and come to LA once every 2 months, take all my meetings that need to be in person, go at all the parties,
and then
do all that stuff.
To your whole
go back, and then if I have to come for a few months to shoot a film or to be on set for a series, I'll come for that. I'll be there for these couple months, and then I'll go back. And that's just I grew up traveling around. My family, lived. We weren't nomadic, but we every couple of years we'd spend a year abroad. My dad works online, so whenever he could take us out of school, put us on homeschooling, and it was fine. That's just kind of how I was raised, and I'm realizing more and more recently that I need that in my life. That's something that feeds me.
But if you were 19 again and you were thinking about going after a career in screenwriting, do you think people should move here or not?
Yes. Yes.
Now, if they have to move here, what are some pointers and with a little bit of your story and how things worked out for you, and how would you do it if you had to do it again in 2022?
If you're in college, it's great to try and get a summer internship or do a semester abroad in LA, anything like that. Those things are super helpful because it gets you here, it gets you a community of people you're already with, and those things, at least for me as someone who's a little more introverted, are super important. So I know a lot of colleges have either exchange programs with colleges in LA, or some universities. Emerson College has a campus out here, and I know other universities have campuses out in Los Angeles. So if you're lucky enough to get one of those, that's amazing. But even if you don't, if you're not able to get that, I think you should still come out. I think when you come out, it's very important to build a community around you. Because there's no point being out here if you're not going to have a community.
And how do you do that? Because I hear people say that all the time. Right. How do you do that?
Yeah, so I do have some tips. So the first thing, when I first moved here, I moved to this place called Upstart. And Upstart is this kind of extended stay youth hostel for creatives. So for actors, writers, musicians, producers, everyone who basically is new to LA or is struggling with money and needs a place to stay that's cheap and with other creatives. And that place was amazing for development. I met my ex-boyfriend there. I met a ton of people I've continued to work on projects with, a ton of friends. So it's been great as a community of collaborators and also as a community of just friends. Because it can be hard to move to a new city, especially a new city where it's so spread out and you need a car to go everywhere, so it's very isolating. Having that community is very important. So Upstart or another kind of community like that, when you're living with people, and if you're not going to be living with people, I think, or if you're not going to be living in one of those kind of community stay places, and how those would work is you'd have basically 8 bunks per bedroom. So it was really like a dorm.
8?
Yeah. It's crazy.
Bunks
it's not for
or
everyone.
8 people?
8 people. Yeah, 8 people. So 4 bunk beds. Yeah.
Holy smokes.
Yeah. It was crazy. It's not for everyone, and it's not forever. You don't want to be there forever. I was there for probably like 4 months, and that was probably good. I was done by the end of that.
Yeah.
But I'd already gotten the benefits of it.
Do 1 month.
Because the other perks of it are there's always people leaving. There's always people moving out. And people move out together, and so a lot of times you'll end up getting an apartment with people also from there. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So those things are definitely, you have to be okay to like, I'm gonna just like kind of live in grunge a little bit for a little bit.
I think if you're 19 and you're coming to LA to live the dream, I think that's a very good way to start. I had never heard about that, but I think it's a really good idea.
And yeah, Upstart is specifically designed for like creatives, so it's a great place to network. But there's other ones. There's Eddy, EDDY, Common. There's other ones that aren't designed for creatives, but they'll give you the same sense of community. And if you're not going to do one of those, if that's not your style, totally get it. Go on like Facebook Marketplace to find a room. So don't just get an apartment by yourself or move out with someone and get an apartment with them unless they're like, or one of you is like a crazy social butterfly. Like getting an apartment with other people that as many as you're comfortable with, finding as many other people, preferably people who've been in LA for a while, can bring you to those communities is going to be super helpful. And then even if don't do Postmates, don't do Uber, go to Starbucks. Like if you have to get like kind of a stopgap job and just get like a job in the retail business or something, go to Starbucks.
Why Starbucks?
It doesn't have to be Starbucks, but go to any of those like places where you're with other people, because everyone in LA is trying to make it in this business. It's bizarre. It's the one city in the world where you can walk down the street, any street in the city, and someone will be talking about camera angles or the Ari Alexa or something. It's bizarre. You never find it anywhere else in the world, and it is constant here. So if you are one of the 4 baristas at Starbucks, at least 2 of the other ones are going to be like
either
screenwriters, actors, musicians.
Yeah.
My roommate is actually a writer who's written on popular shows before, and she also works at Starbucks as well. So like people like you'll make connections with like not just people who are just starting out, but people who like have been in the business for a while and are taking a break from it or whatever. You can make a lot of connections like that, and that's why I say don't do Postmates, don't do anything else.
That's a really good idea.
And I also would say I worked at valet, like as valet parking for the Ellen Show for a while, not when I first got here, but after I left Impact Theory. And that was amazing because not only did it build that community, but also like we parked the car. We were parking for the audience at the Ellen Show, so we would park cars from like 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Then we had nothing to do until about 4 p.m. And then we'd like get cars from 4 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. And then so there was all this time I could just write in the middle of the day, just like sit and write. And you have to be okay being outside in the heat and doing it, but I could just bring my laptop and write for 4 solid hours. I could then park the cars, write for another hour and a half. It was amazing. And so if you're going to do, find a job with people and find a job that is going to give you as much like downtime as possible. You also have to get a boss that's okay with that or a boss that's not present. But those kind of things are really helpful. Yeah.
Thank you, Ellen, for allowing Sam to write on the downtime. So once you have the script ready, what do you do? Because I think there's a lot of content out there about, writing and do this and the scene and the characters, and we know that. But then what?
That's a good question, because that is a question I'm still struggling with as well, is what do you do? So I think when you're first starting out, you put it in a drawer. Well, I think, are you saying after you've gotten notes? Is this like first draft? Are you saying the script is polished, you are ready, you could shoot this tomorrow, in your opinion?
I think first draft. Finish your first draft, what do you do? Because I think before you come to LA, I would recommend you write and you come here with something. Don't come here saying, I want to be a writer. Have a few scripts.
That's a good point. Yeah. You want, and the most important thing, write. Like, write every day. I don't write on the weekends, but every weekday, write, or every weekend. It does. And if you can't do every day, you know, make a plan. Make sure you're writing progressive, like at consistent increments, you're producing pages. Because that is the number one thing that I've heard from like executives and producers and stuff is people will say, oh, I want to be a writer, and then someone will offer to read them, and they'll be like, oh, I don't have anything. Or they'll have something, and it's a terrible first draft of something they wrote 4 years ago in high school. And that you need to be constantly writing, because it's just like we were talking about at the beginning, you're iterating on your craft all the time. Yeah, so I always leave the draft for a few days. Like, after I finish my first draft, I don't touch it for probably about a week. If I finish it on the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, don't touch it. Then I'll usually go back through and I'll just read through it, and, you know, grammar tweaks, little line changes, things like that. I'll make like little tweaks to it like that. And that usually takes 2 or 3 days for a pilot, maybe a week for a feature. And then at the end of that week, I will send it out to people. And I try not to just in it, because I produce drafts at a reasonable pace, so probably like once every month or two.
At an extremely fast pace, may I add. I cannot keep up with Sam and his drafts. I'm always behind trying to read on the projects that we're working on.
I produce pages pretty quickly. And so I try to kind of, especially if it's a sample. With something like you, there's no real option. Like, we're working on a project together, so I have to send it to you every time. Yeah. But when I'm having like a new sample going, I'll usually kind of alternate who I send it to. So I have a bench of probably 5 or 6 people that I'll send drafts to, and I try to send it to like 2 or 3 of them per script, and make sure that I'm not just like every month being like, here, read this, here, read this, here, read this. So I'll probably send it to 2 or 3 people and ask for notes. Now, ideally, you don't touch it when you're waiting for the notes to come back. I'm not amazing at that. So sometimes I will go and like make tweaks to it while I'm waiting for notes. But eventually notes come back, and I usually try to correspond when the notes come back with doing one read through, and not like editing the script, but doing a read through of it, just to get like fresh eyes on it. Okay. And so I have my notes then, and like at least 2 other people's notes of what they want changed. So then I have 3 sets of notes, and then I kind of go through the notes and I address them. And that's kind of how I do my drafting process. It starts over again. Until no one has any notes, or until I'm feeling like the notes I'm getting are like not helpful anymore. Usually I probably go around 7 or 8 drafts for a sample. Obviously, like Johnny in my movie is like 30 drafts deep or something like that, but I probably like 5, 6, 7, something like that is when I'm done. And then after that, when you're first starting out, I think you put it in a drawer, you can get started on the next one. When you're kind of, if you think this is something you actually want to make, I would send it to someone like you or Katrina and be like, hey, like, or I wouldn't just probably send it to you out of the blue, but I'd be like, hey, I have this idea, I have this script, send a log line or a little bit of information about it and say, what do you think about this?
So you mentioned Johnny Santana. He's another filmmaker friend of ours. Tell me about this project and how has been the process, because you mentioned 30 drafts.
Yeah. That's been a long process.
That's a lot.
Yeah. And I'm actually doing another season of my podcast that is going to kind of air later in the year when that film's coming out. That's kind of a blow-by-blow breakdown of how you kind of go from script to screen. And so it's going to be each episode, it's going to focus on a different aspect of the filmmaking process. Plug over. Now, so that basically started when Johnny kind of asked me to read one of his scripts. And that was probably December 2019, I believe, that he said that. And I read it, and I kind of gave him a lot of notes because it needed a lot of work done. And I was like, hey, I'll do a pass for you if you want. And I did that because I like the project, and also because I like Johnny, and I know Johnny makes stuff. So that's like another thing, is like surround yourself with people who actually make stuff, because it's there's a lot of talk. And if people who make stuff are like, and they say they're gonna make your thing, they're gonna make your thing. And so I'd been kind of looking for a way to get working with Johnny for a while, and he sent me the script, and I was like, it needs work, but I see the promise here. It's interesting. It's kind of a cool story. I would be happy to do a pass. And he said, well, let's just write it together. And so we did the whole like Save the Cat beat sheet at first, and put all our cards up on the wall, moved things around. We basically ended up taking the script he'd written and kind of using the general overarching story of that, and then making that half the film. So that was
half the film.
Yeah. So that film was much more like, it took place over the course of one night. It was very much like have you seen the movie Good Time?
No.
So it's this Safdie brothers movie. It's a movie about basically a guy, you follow him the entire night. And so that was kind of this kind of style. So you start at like 6 p.m., end at like 8 a.m. or whatever. Yeah. That was the original idea. And we said, well, what if we take that, and that's kind of flashbacks, and there's another story, because there was clear issues in that story of like the bones of the story and where it was actually going, and the thematic elements weren't there. So we were like, well, what if we kind of show all this as like flashbacks from another story?
Okay.
So once we had that idea, we kind of broke down the Save the Cat, and we basically said there's a past timeline, present timeline. We're going to do a beat sheet for each timeline and then put them together.
Okay.
Yeah. So we did that, and then we kind of just literally divvied up scenes. We were like, I like these 10 scenes, you like these 10 scenes.
You go right there.
Yeah, you write that. And that kind of corresponded with COVID. It was actually kind of perfect, because it corresponded with COVID. When I went back to New Hampshire, we both kind of ended up over the course of like 2 weeks writing out our scenes, and we put the draft together, and that was the only draft, and it was perfect. No, it was a monster, and it was horrible.
He was a monster, he said.
But we then just started iterating. So each draft he would take. So I think he took the first draft. So he took that monster draft and kind of did it all in his voice. So he took everything and kind of molded it so it felt like one cohesive thing. Then I came in and put my touch on it, and we kind of just went back and forth. We would do a notes call each draft. Kind of explain, like we'd talk over notes and what we wanted. As we definitely got more, did it more, we could kind of tell what the other person's tics were. It's really interesting. You really get to know another person when you see how they write and kind of the wells they go back to and kind of how they handle certain situations. And so it was easier now that we're like into 30 drafts. It was way easier to just kind of be like, oh, this needs to be changed. I'm just going to do it. We don't even need to like have a conversation about this. And we got much better about being like, okay, yeah, we're gonna look at the. I made some changes we didn't talk about, and that's fine.
In this case, because Johnny being the director, are you still like in charge of the script and he's following your lead, or since he's the director, he's in charge of the script and you're following his lead?
So we were co-writers on this. So we looked at this as like, this is 100% equal. And then once the script is over, then it's all Johnny, and I will be on set. I'll do whatever he needs me to do. I'll do punch-ups on the script. I'll give him ideas, all of that. But it's his project, it's his movie. But for writing the script, 100% equal. So there was no, I think, we didn't really have any situations where it was, where there was an impasse. It was usually like one of us was, like if there was something where we disagreed, usually one of us was less passionate about it than the other, or we would just debate it for like 45 minutes and then we'd figure it out. Yeah. And that, it worked really well. I think we got to like 14 drafts, I think, and we said, this is done, perfect. And then we kind of left it for like 5 months while we went to go find funding. It was originally supposed to be on a $4 million, like as a studio film. Surprisingly, it's hard to get funding for a $4 million movie.
Surprisingly?
That's a fun, surprising fact for everyone. It's difficult.
4 mil. They just got 4 mil. Go and do it. Dude,
so that didn't happen.
I worked on on a Sony feature as an assistant location manager. Mm-hmm. And I think we only have like $1.5 million.
Yeah.
Like in the last few years, because everyone is talking about, now you have cameras and the internet and everything. So the studio is like, you have cameras and iPhones and the internet. So like, no more money to make movies.
Plus, it's like the movies that actually make money at the theater, especially Sony doesn't have a streaming service. So it's like the movies that make money at the movie theaters are like very expensive to make. They're $100-200 million. They're like, it's Marvel, James Bond, and like, what else is there? Nothing, maybe. On DC, kind of. Yeah. Like, there's those three, and that's really all that's making money at the theaters. So, like, they need to kind of siphon money away from their smaller projects, make those even smaller, just so they can throw, like, $300 million movies at the wall a year.
Yeah, because it's not only the budget to make the movie, they also have to market that movie
Yeah.
to like millions of people. So
Yeah.
it gets really complicated. I love a low budget production. Like my feature documentary was made with very little money. But I still think there are some things that you need to have. And I'm talking from experience. Like the sound of my film was garbage.
Right.
Just because I did it like on my own. So I was like shooting and then I would set up a mic and then it wasn't good. And that's something that I think going on for whatever my next feature is, I want to have a little bit more money. But it's always interesting to see how people find new ways to make cool stuff with very, very little money.
Yeah.
And if you can at least finish the film and you have some, like, it has to look a certain way. Or what you could do is, if you don't have the money, find an aesthetic for your film that matches the type of budget that you have.
Yeah.
Like, don't try to make a James Bond movie with $20,000.
Yeah,
like, it's not gonna
exactly.
work.
I think that is such a good point, and I think that it's really easy to make movies look good right now. It's not really easy to make them sound good, and that is like it's still tough. You still really need a professional to do it. You can have good mics, and you're still not going to get good sound if you don't have someone who knows what they're doing. That is, I think, why I've interviewed a lot of people on my podcast, and they've all said basically sound and food. Those are the two things you don't skimp on. Those are the two things you pay a lot of money for, because that's going to keep your crew happy and that's going to make people happy when they watch it in the theater. Yeah. I've been worried. I'm trying to do a movie for like $3,000, like super low budget.
Like a feature?
Yeah, a feature.
It's not going to happen, Sam.
That's not true, man. There are many films. Have you heard it? You know the Bulletproof screenwriting podcast? Alex Ferrari? You know who he is?
No.
He makes several $3,000 movies a year.
Are they good though?
I mean, I'm not saying this is going to win Oscars, but it's going to be a feature film that I can say, you know, it's a credit. It is a learning experience. It's going to be all those things.
Okay.
And how I'm doing it.
I'll have to see it. I think $3,000, even if you're shooting in a third world country where your money can go along more, I don't know how you do that.
So,
to be honest,
the way I'm trying to do it, and I don't know if this is going to work, it's all taking place in the trunk of a car.
So how are you going to give me an hour and a half in a trunk of a car?
Have you seen the movie Buried?
With Ryan Reynolds?
Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, really good movie.
Really effective horror movie that takes place
Really good
all
movie.
in
It
a
was,
trunk.
it was not $3,000, I tell
That's
you that.
true, but it was originally supposed to be $3,000, and about $1.5 million of the $2 million budget that it had went to Ryan Reynolds' pockets.
Well, there we start. Like, how do you get a good actor that is gonna? I think we have to backtrack. So, what's the purpose of the movie? If the purpose of the movie is you just want to get something done, you're going to put it up on YouTube, there is no marketing behind it, then yes, I'll have to see the script, see how you're going to keep me interested for like an hour and a half. That sounds really interesting. I'll give you the $3,000 for you to make the movie if I can get an executive producer credit and 50% of all the profit.
All right, man. There we go.
We're checking
right
on
there.
But I think only for your sound mix, you're going to spend like more than that.
You could very well be right. You probably are very well right. And that is, it's an experiment. It's an experiment. But the original idea for Buried was that it was going to cost around $3,000, and then some agent saw it and it went to Ryan Reynolds. You know, it was originally supposed to be around that 3 to 5.
The script was the script on that movie is really
it's pretty
good.
effective. It's really like I'm fascinated by that. This is kind of a tangent. It's not as much about production. It's more about writing, because I think putting more guardrails on your writing is the best way to get good, like better results. There's something they were saying on some podcast the other day that screenwriting is essentially a funnel. So your opening scene, you have infinite possibilities. After your opening scene, you have slightly less possibilities. After your next scene, you have slightly less. You have slightly less. You have slightly less. And it can be really overwhelming for people with that opening scene that they want to do James Bond. They want to do Marvel. They want to do one of these things. And starting with guardrails, so starting with a smaller funnel, I think is a really effective way to give you a strong result. You know, because I found that when I'm working on this project, I really have to think about ways to keep the viewer entertained. I really have to think about something, because something has to happen basically there's like 5 or 6 actual slug lines in this script. It's basically she passes out, wakes back up, or we hard cut to a few minutes later because it's not continuous. But you have to still split these films up into scenes because you can't just have it be one continuous thing. So you have to find things that are like, okay, for the next 5 minutes, she's talking to someone on the phone. Then after that, she's trying to fix her hurt leg. Then after that, the person who's in the front seat of the car is alive, and we thought they were dead, and so she's calling to them through the partition. And so you have to kind of figure out these ways to divvy it into scenes. And to me, it's led to like creativity in a way I haven't experienced in the past, because I'm forced to find a way to be creative in this tight space the size of this counter.
Funny enough, one of my first short films that I did in film school, it was one of those weekend exercises. It was a dude trapped in the trunk of a little car. And I found this cool location. It was like a big junkyard. And then I had my little crane movement and all that. The short was pretty shitty. Like, I don't want to show it to anyone. But I totally agree with you. When you have these limitations, then you have to come up with something good. Like, there's no other way. Yeah. So I'm interested to see what you do with that one. Again, I'll find the money. I'll find the cameras and the actors, and maybe I can help you shoot it. I still believe that the job of filmmakers is not to keep finding ways to make cheaper movies. Is to find the way to raise the funds to make big movies.
Yes, I totally agree. You said something when you came on Screenwriter Survival Guide that really stuck with me, which is that like you don't want to make small movies forever. You don't want to make the super low budget movies forever. Some people are cool with that, and that's awesome. I think if that's what someone wants to do, and they just want to make movies for like $1,000 because they can do whatever they want. They can get as weird as they want. Shane Carruth, who's not the best role model anymore, but like he could do whatever the hell he wanted with his movies.
What movies did he make?
Primer and Upstream Color. Those were his 2 movies.
Primer is the one where they travel.
It's a time travel movie, and then Upstream Color
in the garage and all that.
Yes, it's in like a storage facility. That's you're thinking of the right movie.
Yeah.
But you can do any, like those were like $3,000, $2,000-$3,000 those movies. The first one was $2,000 to $3,000.
Maybe that's what they spent, but when you're not counting for the writer's time, the director's time, the editor's time. Like when you put all of that into perspective, I mean, it's a moot point to try to talk about who made the cheapest movie or whatever, because then you have movies. Primer, even if they made it for $3,000. To get distribution, to go to festivals, and then to put it on streaming services.
Yeah.
Then like your bill runs up, and you end up spending like tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands. So I agree with you. Like we need to find ways to be creative and make these movies as cheap as possible, so you don't stay in the waiting zone forever.
Yeah, because like I do think Shane Carruth is a good example here. Like he made these movies for, even if it was $100,000, still no money. That's nothing for a movie. And then he made Upstream Color for slightly more. And then, if he had been a good person and not, everything that he was, he had a movie that was starring...
What happened to this person?
I'm not 100% sure what it was, but it was something in the Me Too Time's Up kind of thing. He turned out to be a little bit of a sleazebag. But he had a film that he was doing with, like, Asa Butterfield, and it was someone crazy, like... big. It was millions of dollars studio budget. So like that's like what you're saying, where you go, you have to make, like I could not go raise funds for After Death right now. We tried. and
we're gonna keep trying.
Yeah. But I think that's why we're doing the podcast, because it's like you have to have something that shows, oh, you can do this, you're good at this, and then you get something slightly bigger, and then I think there is a ladder. And as much as like, yes, it would be great if we could jump to the top rung, I don't think that's an effective way of like, I think it's much more effective to look at like, okay, what can I do now? What small thing can I start doing while also keeping the big projects in the background and running on the big projects? Yeah, that's
my strategy, because I have seen big projects. I have been a location scout and location manager on big studio projects. And I have seen some of those people directing and producing and writing where they came in and that's their second project.
Yeah.
And they went and wrote something, did something like indie, and it was good. It showed voice, and they got lucky, and then they get a deal, and now they're directing like the next Amazon Prime like massive project.
Look at Eternals, like Chloe Zhao, who made Nomadland. Nomadland's a great movie.
Nominations and all that with Nomadland.
Yeah, that was a great, but it was indie, super low budget. I mean, Frances McDormand, so it was a couple $1 million, but like. she was really good at that, and then they jumped her up too high, too quickly. Like not to say that she couldn't have made a great Eternals film in 10 years, but not today. And I think that's like a perfect example of what you're saying. That's kind of the highest profile example right now, but that happens, I think, all the time. Whereas it's just like this, you want new exciting voices. But then the flip side of that is you end up with something like I May Destroy You, who is also Michaela Cole is relatively new, and this, I believe, was her first show. Actually, I don't know if that's true. Don't hold me to that.
Yeah, I haven't seen that show yet.
But she's still relatively a new voice, and she's still, like, you have these wild success stories, and you have these wild failures.
Yeah.
Now, I May Destroy You isn't a Marvel show. Also, it's still a pretty small, tight, personal story as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that double strategy of doing the low budget while also working on the big things, that's the approach that I'm taking. I'm working at Impact Theory because I believe where the studio is going, and I'm trying to do my best to take the projects that they have there in development and figure out how can I make this my own and then get it made and push from within a new studio. Even that studio is trying to pitch to big studios, and we have projects, and we're trying to get with like the major studios. And I'm also staying up at night trying to figure out, okay, but I want to make my own movie that I want to make. And I'm working with you trying to push After Death, which is a big sci-fi, high budget TV show.
That'd be expensive, yeah.
But then we're also talking about, hey, Sam, how can we write something that I can shoot for like $50K and do it with a couple actor friends and just shoot it? Because I have that desire, to like go and grab my camera and like go and shoot something. So I still don't know.
Yeah.
I still don't know how it's going to work out. Yeah. And lately, I'm just accepting the idea that you're not supposed to know how things are going to work out. Yeah,
I'm in the same boat with you there, because especially with me making the decision to take a break from LA, and it's really easy for me to go down this hole of like, oh my God, I leave, I lose all my connections, I never blah blah blah. It all fails.
Tell me about that, because like you're one of the people that I admire the most. You're always working. I'm surprised by the amount of like pages that you're always cranking out, and I think you should not leave from the career side of things, but we all have personal things that are also going along with our career, and maybe that's something we forget sometimes. We don't know what that person that got the big show, you don't know what their life has been in the last 5 years. And even people that you see that are super successful, they have their struggles. It's not like they just got lucky and they're talented, out of this world, they're aliens, they're like gods. It's like, no, they're struggling with things and they're finding ways to keep creating. So tell me about that, and you're only share whatever you want to share, but tell me about that decision of leaving.
I'm totally happy. So I've always said since I first started this that I would only, if it came down to like happiness or my career, happiness all the way. I'll fucking flip burgers if I have to. If it's gonna make me happy, and like doing this isn't gonna make me happy, whatever. Like I just don't think it makes sense. Like I don't think logically, I don't think it makes sense to like try to hustle and be a writer if it's not making you happy. And I have not been living that. I have been saying it, but I've not been living it. And I think I'm so close to this right now. I still believe that I get so much joy from writing and from talking about writing and from getting excited about sets, and like this makes me really excited right now, like sitting here and talking about projects and like talking, we're developing this project, like, we might be making this feature, like all of these things, they get me really excited. But I've also been really like borderline depressed the last like 6 months, I'd say. And I think that has a lot more to do with just like loneliness, of just like, I'm someone who like, I need to be surrounded by people if I'm gonna be socially active. Like it's really easy for me to sit on my couch on a Saturday night and watch TV and get DoorDash, because I'm not super comfortable with like I'm going to reach out to someone here, I'm going to reach out to this person, like let's hang out. So it's much easier for me to be social consistently if I'm surrounded by people. That's been really hard during COVID, and so I think that's what's going on. I think what's going on is I've just been lonely, and that's been making it like, that's been sapping all the joy out of my writing. It's been sapping all the joy out of my life. And going back for Christmas and then to Utah in the early January this year, I felt like alive in a way I hadn't felt in at least like 6 months. And on and off throughout COVID, basically whenever I was in LA, I was feeling like shit. And I think what I'm like need to do is I need to test that hypothesis and be like, okay, if I take this year and I just like do crazy shit, and I'm still probably gonna write. I may take a few months off of writing and just like see if what that does, and then slowly introduce it back in. But I'm still hoping on doing my film this year. I'm still hoping on working on getting those after death podcasts. I might be doing something with impact theory. I'm not sure. That's all up in the air right now. But I'm still thinking about those projects. But I think I need to kind of test whether or not like being somewhere else, being surrounded by more people, and being like more social is going to make me happier or not. Gotcha. And the best way to do that, I think, is to leave my status quo.
It totally makes sense.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's not a matter of the city. It's just a matter of like you and like your personal circumstances. I think it's a great idea to go now and try things, try living in different places and all that. And hopefully you're going to find that fun and like that excitement again, and probably putting down your writing for like a few months and then coming back to it is going to help you come up with new ideas. I have a secret intention to keep you here and not let you go anywhere.
You said you were going to lock me in your apartment, not let me go home.
I think what's going to happen is that you're going to go wherever you're going, and then you're going to see new ideas, and then you're going to start all of a sudden. One day you're going to wake up with like, I got this idea because of something that happened yesterday, and now you're going to start writing a new thing, which is always wonderful because, like, I agree with you. I have had the same feelings of feeling lonely and all that in the last year. It comes and goes, and depending on what you're doing. And sometimes I'm on a Saturday night and I'm here just editing, or I sit down and watch a movie. And I'm a super extroverted person, but we all have those moments, And it's really interesting that you're thinking about happiness in your career, and like you have to put your happiness first. For me, if I wasn't pursuing filmmaking and making movies and all that, I wouldn't be happy. So if I gave it up at some point, it would probably be because of some like big personal reasons, and I still think I would find a way to get back to it. And I think because I have read what you have written, I think you have that in you, because you cannot create amazing things like what you write without having that innate desire to like sit down, and your imagination is something you cannot shut off. So
I think you're right. I think I'll get to like week 2 and be like, what am I doing with my free time? Because I'm going to be like I'm literally going to like base level work, because I'm going to a ski resort in Utah to work as a lift operator, get a free season pass, and basically free housing. And that's basically what I'm trying to do for the rest of this winter. And so I think I'll probably get to week 2 and be like, oh my God, I need to write again.
No, maybe you write a ski resort drama.
Yeah, maybe. My parents were pitching me, when I told them this idea, they were pitching me like, like a sitcom about lift operators.
So like your parents are pitching you ideas?
They're like, you could write they do that all the time. They're always like, here's your idea. I'm like, ideas are not the problem. It's not that I don't have ideas. That's not the problem. But that is a good idea.
Yeah, that's actually a good idea. It's going to be hard you can only shoot in the winter.
It is, yes, that is true. You have to shoot in the winter. It's hard to do on a soundstage. A lot of exteriors. And they don't really make those shows that as much, like straight sitcoms. They don't really make those as much, so who knows? But
maybe we need a new sitcom. So Sam, if you could do anything, budget was not an issue, and like you could write like your masterpiece, what would you make?
That is a really good question. Now I know you didn't personally respond to this script, but I am really excited about this one project I have, Indivisible. And it's basically, it's very roughly inspired by a podcast called It Could Happen Here, basically about the potential for an upcoming American Civil War, as kind of we get more polarized and split apart. And I wrote a script again, roughly inspired, but not in the legal sense. It's called Indivisible, and it's basically about a group of people in Phoenix, Arizona that are trying to decide whether or not to leave as the kind of militias crop up and kind of the social order breaks down. And I'm very excited about that project. That if I got $50 million today, I'd probably be like, let's get that project done.
No, it's gonna be after death first.
Yeah, right. After death, of course. Yes, I assumed after death was too bad of an answer. I couldn't give after death.
Yeah, no, you could. You
After
have
death
to,
would, of course. That's
you
of
have to
course
say
the first
whatever
thing on
you
the
want
docket.
to make.
Of course, after death's the first thing on the docket.
So why are you drawn to? Because these two shows are post-apocalyptic. Everything went to shit. What draws you to that type of story?
I don't know. I don't know what draws me to that kind of story. That's like I need more years of therapy before I can do that. Right now I see it in the world, which is depressing to say, and it's sad. I really, really hope I'm wrong, but I kind of see it happening.
Yeah.
Where
it's interesting because like my perspective is completely different.
I know I wish my mind worked more like yours, but I think there's two types of people, right? And I think there's a type of person that like they see primarily the positive. When they see a situation, there's two paths. There's a way you can think of the negative, and there's a way to think of the positive. When they're faced with a new scenario, they think of the positive path. And then there's another type of person that thinks of the negative path. I think I'm the person that thinks of the negative path, and you're the type of person that thinks of the positive path. Yeah. And I'm really trying to think more of the positive path because I think it's better to live there, and that's like part of the reason that led me to make this decision to go to Utah for a few months. Of just being like, it's not going to kill me, you know. I'm not going to die. I'm not going to be 50 all of a sudden, you know. But I think that for my writing, I think that is where I tend to go. And when I've tried to write things that are lighter and more like happy and fun and like look at all the amazing things that could happen, they don't turn out as well. There's just something about like this sense of like, so with After Death, for instance, my dad fully believes we're going to live to 250. That's his thing.
Yeah, and after Death is a show where everyone looks young, and they have been taking this treatment that keeps them young, and they live for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. And this is the world overpopulated. So it sounds really cool. Yeah. And I can totally see what you're saying. Yeah. With that premise, I could say, oh, it's a world that is amazing. Yeah. Everyone is beautiful and young and strong, and it's super cool, and now we're going to do amazing things. Yeah. Or you could do Sam's version, which is
dark as shit.
It's dark, the world is overpopulated, and people are depressed because they get to live young and happy. Yeah. No, they get to live young and beautiful forever, but now they're depressed.
Yes. So After Death, I think it probably did start as like dour, and because it's like the negative path, but I do think I've kind of come around to it as like just that mortality might be good. Like it might be a good natural thing that we should do. So this kind of weird thing that's happened with COVID, where kind of days turn to weeks and weeks turn to months and months turn to years, and it's this very weird kind of this flow. That's kind of I've really started to think of After Death like that. Like, what if that just happens for 300 years? Like that seems really depressing. Like, and at a certain time, especially since I think this whole movement into space and this kind of like Elon Musk space future is way further away than we think. Because, you know, if you look 2050, he wants to launch the rocket or whatever, 2030 or whatever. That's what, 10 people. And then like they launched a colony, and 10, 20, 50. If we got 1 million people up there, that's still like a fraction of the world's population, not even a fraction.
And for me, all of that is super interesting. I want them to go and do all of that and build everything. I don't think I want to go. Yeah. And also living over there, it's not going to be that cool. It's just you're going to be trapped in like this whatever thing where you cannot go outside and like, go to the beach or something.
It's going to be it's going to be difficult. It would be cool to visit for a weekend if you could, if you had like hyper speed. I definitely think space tourism is cool. Like going to space would be slick, but no, I wouldn't want to go to space. That's depressing. But I think like just spending like at a certain time. So it's an Isaac Asimov. I think it's an Isaac Asimov story that I heard when I was a kid. That is basically this guy dies, and he meets God, and God tells him, "Okay, you can go anywhere in the universe, as much as you want, do whatever you want, enjoy." And so this guy, he goes everywhere, and after 20,000 years, he starts to feel a little bored. He goes back to God. He says, I'm feeling a little bored. God's like, just go experience more. You need to experience more. So he goes and experiences tons more. And he goes back to God 100,000 years later. He's like, please, I need, can you let me die? Because I'm not feeling anything. There's nothing new to experience. And then God says, no, I'm sorry, I can't. So the guy goes back out. Another 100,000 years pass. And the guy is like like can't stand it anymore. And the man can't stand it anymore. He's like, okay, God, if you can't kill me and I can't leave this place, just send me to hell. And God says, well, where do you think you are? And I think that idea, like the idea of that immortality is essentially hell, because it's forcing you. There's at a certain time you exhaust all possibility for like new experience and for new synapses to fire in your brain. And there's this thing, I think Peter Diamandis said it, that like by age 30, most people, not everyone, but most people, they're like 90% of their brain's activity is repetitive. So it's 90% of their brain's activity is repeated. And that is scary. And that's by age 30. So imagine by age 300, 10,000. Like,
so why do we still have this desire to like not die?
My personal theory is that for tens of thousands of years, humanity had God. And in recent years, we've stopped believing in God, as obviously many people still do. But as a society, our society has grown much more atheist and agnostic. And that if you look at the people who believe they're going to live forever, there's usually not a lot of like overlap between them and like religious people. And that that human beings effectively cannot cope with our own mortality. If we try to actually face our immortality, we get depressed. And depression is the kind of how I handle it, because essentially nothing matters. There is nothing but a void. We die. We die and then we're dead. And so my personal theory is that the craze of immortality is because so many people are facing the idea that when you die, you become dust. You simply cease to exist. The synapses in your brain cease firing. You are gone.
Done.
And so my belief, and I don't know if this is true, is that a lot of people are turning to immortality as kind of a salve for that. It's a new god that they're worshiping now. This I'm not going to die.
Like a new big goal to keep you excited about.
Yeah, it's like,
living.
well, I don't need to worry about death because I'm going to live forever. It's kind of like I don't need to worry about death because I'll see all my loved ones again and be in heaven.
But that's religion too. It gives you
no, that's what I'm saying. That's like the old way. It's like I don't need to worry about death because I'll go to heaven and see my family.
But now you realize
I don't need to worry about death because it doesn't exist, because all of my family will be alive forever.
Yeah. Well, I don't think we're going to get to that quickly.
I don't think we're generations out from that, if it is.
Yeah, we're many generations out from that. But I did hear to someone that you and I both know who had a conversation with a very high-profile scientist, and they're really close to discovering some things that it sounded very much like after death, to be honest.
Wow.
So I needed to tell you about that. I'll tell you more later.
Yeah. That's fascinating. And I'm not saying I'd be strong enough not to take the pill. And I am also not, I don't think 90 is the correct age for humans to die at either. I think if we can keep our bodies like virile and young-ish and be able to still do the things we want to do, I don't want to die when I'm 90. I don't want to die when I'm 100. I want to die when I'm 300. I just think that immortality is not a good goal. I think it's like eventually we'll end up like that man in hell. Yeah. And
for us now, 90 sounds amazing. And it is almost like we all expect to live up to 90. It's like the standard. Like if you die at 60, people are like, oh, he died so young. Hundreds of years ago, making it to 30 was awesome. Making it to 60 was
unheard of. Yeah.
It was like for kings and like very well-protected people.
You're right. And there is an idea, like this is kind of what my dad believes, is that like there is no such thing as like an age you're supposed to die. It's just like as we cure more diseases, your body stops dying. And that's effectively what's causing death. And death is an illness, is kind of how he believes. And maybe that's true. And maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I hope we can all live for 10,000 or 20,000. And
I think that's probably too much. I think we're, at least in our lifetime, I think we're going to see a significant increase where maybe living to 120 is like...
I would not be at all surprised if I lived to be 150. Like I think... when you start to get to 200, 300, I'm like, Now, I think there is the thing that my dad always says to this is like the progression. Like when you get to 150, the science will have progressed to that point to let you live to 200. And so even like if when you get to 150, or even if when you get to 100, the technology doesn't exist to let you live past 120, it will exist by the time you hit 120. And then it's a question of like, lossless, like will allow you to still live like you're 50 when you're 120, when you're 160. And that's the question. And it's a lot of questions we don't have answers to.
I think before we get to that advance in medical sciences, we're going to get to the point where you could almost download your consciousness or
into
a mix of your personality into an avatar, like an AI that will take everything that you give it, and then it would almost clone a matrix code of you, and then it will keep learning. But even if you have that, it would only be useful if your loved ones who are still alive want to pay for that, so they can still like FaceTime with you and like talk to a version of you that is digital. And then maybe if we get enough of those, and then if you make it truly AI where it can interact and it can keep learning and keep interacting with other people, I think a version of that we might be able to see in the future.
What's fascinating is there already is this chat app you can download. And it is, I don't remember what it's called, but there is already a chat app you can download, and you can give them someone's social media handle, someone who's dead. And if they're active enough on social media, it can comb through all of their posts and figure out how they talk. And it's not perfect, obviously. It's not a perfect illusion, but you can actually text with your dead loved ones.
Wow.
And you give it videos, you give it any information you have on the person, and it creates an AI.
There's a Black Mirror episode that is very much
it's like that. Black Mirror. It's crazy. Yeah, and it's real. I heard about it. Today Explained, the podcast that Vox does. They did a whole special about it, about this man who's been talking with his dead wife or his dead fiance, because he's just and
that's kind of creepy, dude.
It's a little freaky, and I don't know if it's good. It feels like it's emotional porn almost. Like it's a way to not deal with grief.
Yeah, but why should you deal with grief if you don't have to?
That's true. I guess we're looking at this from a very 2022 lens of or in our world lens, where the emotions that humans deal with are natural and they're part of being a human. And if we get to a point where those emotions are cured, like a disease, then that's true. It's a different. It's like, is it bad at that point? And it gets into the question of whether good and bad are relative. And I believe that they are. That there's no such thing as good or bad. That it is all in the eye of the beholder. So. Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. I think if it's your fiance, you should move on, so then you can find a new fiance. And
that's the question. How much, by taking this small bit of happiness, how much happiness are you sacrificing?
Yeah. But what if it's my grandmother?
Yeah.
My grandma passed away last year.
Yeah.
And every now and then, I hear her phrases and or I'm cooking something or I eat something that reminds me of her. What if I could chat with her? That would be pretty cool. She hated phones and technology and all that, so
that'd be difficult.
But it would be really cool, and I think we're probably gonna get to that point. Maybe in the world of after death, we need to have something like that.
Something like that, where except no one dies, so you don't have loved ones that you're.
But they would have their loved ones.
I guess
from
people
the treatment.
I guess you're right, because they would. Yeah, that's true.
Season 2.
This is season 2 feature. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very interesting how we have all of these things that no matter how much technology we create, there is still a big piece of being humans that we completely don't understand. And I think that's where I have been in the last few years. I grew up as a Christian evangelical in the church. My life was completely based on that belief.
Yeah.
And then all of that changed. And now I'm left with not disbelief. It's just I understand things better to the point where you can understand, okay, this explanation, it's just not, it cannot hold everything that we now know.
Right.
And I think once you see that, you cannot unsee it.
Yeah.
But I still have so much wonder and awe, and I have no idea what we really are or where we really supposed to go or anything like that. That's a very interesting topic that I think so many movies have touched on. You have The Matrix, which is one of my favorite movies of all times, and even the new Matrix. Have you seen the new one?
Yeah, I want to know. We can do that. Take this offline, but what do you think of The Matrix?
Let's do it. I liked it.
You did? Yeah.
I did liked it. I wasn't going in expecting a whole lot. So for me, if I wanted to like it, and then when I watched it, I was like, this is actually really interesting.
Yeah.
So what they did is they took everything that happened before and they just said, okay, that happened, but now we're going to give you a new alternative version where you think that happened, but it was not really happening. And it was like some layers deep into this fake life that Neo was living. And then you have the fact that most people want to stay in that loop or this like predetermined reality, so they can feel secure and they don't want to know that there's other things outside of that. And it sounds simple and kind of cliche, but I'm pretty sure you can think about a few people that you know that they actually rather live within these parameters of thinking that this is safer, or there's nothing you can do about X, Y, and Z, or this is my situation, this is the only thing that I can do, or like these people are evil and they want to control me, or I think
it's fascinating. Like I heard this story about this study they did about menus, that when you look at like a restaurant menu, you should have 3 to 5 choices. If you have less, people will feel like they don't have a choice and they're being forced to eat what they want. But if you give them more than 3 or 5 choices, they will get overwhelmed and they won't enjoy the eating at the restaurant because they'll feel like they're missing too much. And people actually don't want free will. In most cases, people want some level of free will. They don't want to be faced with the fact that they don't want free will. They don't want to be given the one choice in the menu. But they want to feel like they have free will and they're choosing between 3 to 5 predetermined things. They don't want to have an infinite number of possibilities of things they can choose.
That's hilarious. The first time ever I went to a Subway, they asked me, what type of bread do you want? And I was like, I was in shock for like 10 seconds. I was like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean, what type of bread? Because I come from Cuba.
Because Cuba, where you
just have the one bread, like it's bread.
Because it's a communist country, That's crazy. And there's a story about is it Gorbachev or some like one of the communist leaders, and he came to America for like some summit, and on the way back he's like, I want to see America, I want to see a little bit. So his driver brought him to a grocery store, and he went into the grocery store and he got super depressed. He's like, oh, the USSR is over, like because there's like 15 different types of like breakfast cereal, and he was like, well, who decides how much to buy of each and what flavors? And the store clerk was like, oh, the people decide, like the people want. And it's crazy, it's insane, it's bizarre. It doesn't really have anything to do with the freedom of choice, but it's very interesting.
So what did you think about The Matrix?
I had fun at it. I did not think, now here's some blasphemy for the impact theory community. I think The Matrix, the original Matrix, it's a fine action movie. I am not in love with that movie at all.
The first one?
The first one, yeah.
Okay.
I think I understand, like, there's a lot of movies that, like, I understand I should appreciate them, and I do appreciate them because they created all of these things.
So you're 23. So when the first Matrix came out...
It came out in what, 1998? 1999?
99.
99, so I'd be 1.
You were 1.
So I did not see it.
Yeah, that's why. That's why.
And I think it
doesn't have that weight for you.
Yeah.
Because by the time you watched it when you were like 15.
Yeah, and I'd seen so many things that were copying it that those were my originals.
Yes.
And then like The Matrix was this like, well, it's just less of that.
It's an old movie.
So yes, I don't see what a lot of people in the impact theory community see in The Matrix.
And by the way, not in the impact theory community.
In general, in the world.
In the world, and like in film lovers everywhere. I think the same happens to me.
I'll watch it. I never will not want to watch it.
Yeah, but I could never expect that you're going to love that movie the same way that I love that movie. Because when I watched it, it was like...
Right.
So when The Matrix came out, I was like 10. So imagine if you're a 10-year-old kid and you have never seen like bullet time or like all the fight sequences... Like when I watched that, it was like unbelievable. Yeah. And then you watch it like 3 years later, and then you start trying to pay attention to the philosophy, and it's amazing. Yeah. And then you watch it again when you're 19, and it's like, for me, it's really interesting because The Matrix, when I first got to like really sit down to analyze it, I was Christian. So to me, it was like this movie is like an allegory to Jesus as a savior. Yeah. So I saw it with those lenses. Yeah. And it was as everyone needs to be saved So everyone needs like the word of God.
Yeah.
And you have the chosen one,
Huh.
who is Jesus Christ, and it was the perfect Messiah.
Yeah.
And I was looking it through that lens.
Yeah.
And then I watched it again after I came to America, and then I start changing my beliefs. I watch it again, and it's like, oh, wait.
Right.
It's the opposite.
Yeah.
Instead of like him,
You had to break
being-
out of this. Yeah.
Yes, it's like religion is where people are kind of asleep and they believe all of this dogma.
Yeah.
And then someone is going to break out of that, and you take Neo. Once you come into America and you get the more Western version of like the self and identity, then you see yourself as Neo.
Huh.
Then to me, it was
Oh,
like,
it's like you're in Zion. You're like coming out. You're in the Nebuchadnezzar. You're in the
Yes.
Nebuchadnezzar now that you're in America.
yeah.
Huh.
And it's like, first when I watched the movie, it was like Neo was Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Then I watched it again, and no. I am Neo.
You're Neo.
I'm coming out of the Matrix, and I can have the power
Yeah.
to see the reality.
Yeah.
And then you watch it again years later, and you can take it as, wait, capitalism or society or whatever could be that Matrix facade thing. And now you have to break out of not just being an individual, now you have to break out of your own preconceived notions of who you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
So it's like 3 levels deep.
Yeah.
So like, see how that journey is completely different.
Yeah.
Probably when you watched
Oh,
it.
of course. Yeah. It was an action movie. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like it's an
so
action movie.
It's completely different. So I really love it, and I'm happy that I have that film. Another movie that we disagree is your beloved Dune.
Dune. Oh, you didn't like Dune, right? Yeah.
I did not like it the same way that you did.
I like the movie a lot. I don't think I've ever had a reaction to a movie as strong as your reaction to The Matrix, though. I don't think there's no movie I could talk about. It's like sit here and talk about like how deeply and profoundly it affected me and my journey as a human being, as you're talking about there, which is very interesting. But yes, I did like Dune.
Yeah. My thing with Dune is it was like 30 to 40 minutes too long. I just think they needed
I get that completely.
cut some out of it. I love the lead actor, Chalamet.
Yeah, Chalamet.
That's how you say his name. I think he was awesome. I really liked him. I love Zendaya, but I think...
Well, all 2 seconds of her.
and I think they just repeated the same shots over and over. And from the beginning of the movie, they already told me that was going to happen. So it felt like it was never a surprise or anything.
Yeah.
So I was kind of sad that I didn't enjoy that as much. Jason Momoa, I thought that they were going to use him more in the movie. And then it was very short and he died so quickly. So I did not like it.
Yeah. No, I understand all of those. I think there's something. So for me, you said The Matrix is this like profound, like, because you saw it when you were 10. The movies I saw when I was 10 were like Harry Potter, like the later Harry Potter movies,
I
and
love Harry Potter.
like the Hunger Games. Those were kind of the foundational texts of film for me, which is maybe why I don't have this deep, profound reaction to them.
He just said that the Hunger Games is the foundation film text of his life.
Harry Potter more, but yes, that may be why I'm not so deep about it.
Say Harry Potter, don't ever say the Hunger Games again anymore.
The Hunger Games is a good movie.
The Hunger Games is a very overrated movie.
The kind of YA movies, like they're all the same. They're very like plot. They're very predictable. They're shot the same way. They're scored the same way. They're acted the same way. I thought the Hunger Games, it tried things differently. I think the movie, if you look at it, and especially if you look at the first one and then you watch the subsequent ones, they're very different in their style and aesthetic. The first one, I think Gary Ross was a director. I don't know, someone Ross.
You watched the only thing I love about the Hunger Games is Jennifer Lawrence. Like I love Jennifer Lawrence. I think she's amazing. She's gorgeous. She's an amazing actress. But it comes down again to the timing, I think. When did you watch the Hunger Games? That was like
13.
2012?
That was probably 13, 14, something like that.
Yeah. When I watched it, I was like,
No, and you're right. I don't think The Hunger Games is an amazing film by any stretch of it. For me, it was like a midnight showing I got to go see with my dad. You know, it was like I got to stay up late. You know, I got to like do all this stuff.
13-year-old Sam going to the movies at 12.
I was super excited by that.
Hilarious.
Back when they still did midnight showings, I'm very sad they don't do those anymore. Those were amazing.
Funny. One good thing about communist countries, like we would watch movies at any time.
Yeah.
I remember watching the Seven Deadly Sins when I was like 6 or 7.
Yeah.
Which is, if you don't know, it's a very like hardcore David Fincher like serial killer movie with like not.
Oh, you're saying 7, right?
Yes.
7. Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah.
I
was like, I don't know this David Fincher movie, Seven Deadly Sins, and then I was like, yeah, 7.
That was the, like the Spanish name that they gave it.
Oh yeah.
So they, if you call a movie 7 in Cuba, people will be like, "What are you talking about?" So I remember watching that movie and having nightmares for a very long time because I was 7 years old.
Yeah.
When I watched that.
Yeah.
So
I can imagine. It's a scarring movie.
Yeah, that's incredible. Like the way movies can, like I can almost see my life by the movies that I watch and when I watch them, and I can go back and like one of my favorite of all times, Terminator 2.
That's a great movie.
Amazing movie, but probably when you watched that, it was like already like
Terminator.
Piece of crap.
No, there's a couple of movies. I think for me, the ones that really like, stood out to me are the ones that like my parents would like I would get to stay. It was usually like experiences of like I would get either to go to like a midnight showing or I'd get to like stay up late on like a school night and go see them with my parents, or watch them at home. So like the ones like the kind of 80s-ish movies that kind of really stuck out. I think Terminator 2 is 90s, but or T2 and Aliens. Those are the two that I still like respond to in ways that I don't respond to the other ones. To me, they're still not like Harry Potter was my shit. That was like the thing I got really excited about.
I had no idea you like Harry Potter. I love Harry Potter. If you can look over there,
I know you got your literary ink. Yeah,
that's my feature dog literary ink is basically like tattoos about Harry Potter.
Right. Yeah.
So I love Harry Potter. I just watched the reunion thing.
Oh yeah, I haven't seen that one. Yeah.
You need to watch it. You're gonna love it because they go back and they show like everything. For me, you make a Harry Potter movie and that's it. You can like, okay, I can say bye. Like I think those movies are incredibly.
Fantastic Beasts 7.
No, Fantastic Beasts. I cannot stand it.
So you got to just reboot the franchise. That's what you're saying.
No, I think it's interesting. We're getting to the point where the impact of a film is hugely correlated to the timing in your life where you watch it. So if you're watching a movie that is really well made and you watch it in your like teenage years, I think it will create an impression in your life like nothing else.
Yeah.
So
it's kind of like music. Like the music that you listened to when you were 12 or like 15 is the best music in the world. It doesn't matter if the music you listen to, like the music I listened to, was shit when I was 12 to 15. But now I just love shit music, and that's just like the best music in the world to me is like Katy Perry, and that's because like that's what closeted Sam was listening to at 13 years old.
That's hilarious, but you're absolutely right. And when I was 13, I was listening to Christian reggaeton.
Yeah, Christian reggaeton. That's still the best music.
Can you imagine? And I would still play one of those tracks, and I have like two or three of my best friends that we grew up together in that time. That's the shit. Like we played that, and it's like best music ever. So that's hilarious that you were listening to Katy Perry. So now that you say closeted Sam at 13, tell me a little bit about that whole thing of like, if you want to get into it.
Sure. But like coming out, and then how that works in mix with your career and with personal life, because that's something. And to be honest, like I don't know much. You didn't know I was gay until 2 months ago.
Yeah,
we were
more than that.
It felt like 2 months ago, but like
I had no idea.
We were working on the pitch deck, and you were like, "What kind of girls are you into?" I'm like, "Not girls."
That's hilarious. Yeah, for me, it's like Sam. It's just a person.
Yeah,
so.
I get that. I don't come off. I don't have like a stereotypically like any gay kind of stereotypical kind of mannerisms. I mean, I don't think my parents were my mom was desperate for gay kids. Like if nurture had anything to do that, like she wanted us. I'm being facetious a little bit.
Oh,
I don't know. She just wanted
That's it. I thought you were gonna say your mom was devastated.
No. She would have loved it if we were all gay. She got 2. Out of 5, she got 2. So that's good. She got 2 gay kids. So I wasn't like. I definitely had like a very supportive family. The only like I had an awkward conversation with my grandfather because he believes that gay, because he's a priest, Catholic priest or a Presbyterian priest or something, and he believes that being gay is against the Bible or something. So that was an awkward conversation. But I didn't have any like negative like conversations. I was very kind of my thing growing up was I was very afraid that. Like I kind of knew I was gay from the beginning. Like there was maybe like 6 months after I started like, figuring my stuff out that I was like, maybe I'm straight. And then I was like, oh, no. I keep fantasizing about guys. I'm not straight. And I think what was difficult for me was I was very worried. My thing about coming out was that like all of my straight friends were going to think I was into them. And that they wouldn't want to hang out with me because of that. Mm-hmm. And so that was kind of a big kind of hurdle for me. And then I also I dated girls in high school, even though I kind of knew I was gay. And I didn't want to so I came out as bi first. So at the end of high school, when I was like in senior in high school, I kind of came out to my friends, came out to my parents, didn't come out to public. And that I came out as bi because I didn't want to kind of I was very worried about I was very image obsessed and didn't want to come off as oh, I've never dated anyone. So I dated girls and I wanted those to still count, which was the stupidest thing ever. That's something you don't realize in high school is stupid. But once you get out of high school, you're like, that's so fucking dumb. And then, so I came out as bi. And then in college, that was the first time I was out to everyone. I just when I went to Ireland, I was didn't know anyone, so I just came out to everyone. And about 6 months into that, I was like, oh, why am I pretending to be bi? So I just told my friends, yeah, I'm gay. I'm very lucky because I don't present as gay, and my family was all very supportive. So I can't speak to people who don't have that situation and how that coming out experience will be. But for me, I know that it was when the coming out was the worst part. And actually not even coming out, the pre-coming out. Everyone responded. The thing I found when I told people is they just didn't care. It was they really maybe they were maybe my parents, I'm sure my parents were putting on airs that they didn't care. They were really trying not to care. But it really seemed like they just did not care. They had no, I told my dad and he was okay. Okay, and? He could tell there's something on my mind, so he asked me what was up and I told him and he was okay, yeah, what's up? So what's up? Or whatever. So there's I was just very surprised that people didn't care. But that's, again, because I had really supportive parents and don't come off as gay. So
I think they care. It's just that they care more about you than and to love you and
And I think at least, I don't know about my dad. I don't think he has a problem with it. But my mom is desperately wants more gay kids. It was made her day, I'm sure. When I told her. So but yeah. So that's been my experience. And if someone's struggling with that, it's hard, but even if you do have unsupportive parents, you will feel better doing it. At the end of the day, afterward, it seemed like it was the biggest thing in the world when I was dealing with it, and after, it feels like nothing. It feels like this little thing in my past. I don't think about being gay maybe once a week. I really don't think about it. I don't think of my relationships as gay relationships. I really don't think like that. So if you are struggling with it, there is light at the end of the tunnel. You're just a person. You're just a normal person.